Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 25th of March of 2026. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk, during the first parts of the video we will talk about the situation in Ukraine, and during the second part of the video we will discuss the situation in the Middle East. So let's start with Ukraine. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians launched one of the largest attacks deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation using hundreds of drones. Furthermore, the Ukrainians used missiles, and the Ukrainians, it seems, used 5 jet-powered drones. According to these pictures, you can see most of the drones were heading towards the northern regions of Russian Federation, and during the day we received lots of updates from Leningrad region. So I would like to remind you that several days ago Ukrainians attacked the settlement of Primorsk, and here we have this video with the biggest fire anomaly, with the very big fire. The Ukrainians, according to information we have, destroyed or damaged significantly the port infrastructure and oil infrastructure in the area of the city of Primorsk. And basically a day after, 2 days after, the Ukrainians once again attacked in the same direction. And this time the Ukrainians attacked 2 cities, the city of Vyborg and the city of Ust-Laga. So as for the settlement of Vyborg, the Ukrainians, as a result of attack on the Vyborg shipyard in the Leningrad region, the newest project, ice-class border patrol ship, listed to port and collided with the neighboring vessels. Strikes were also launched against the seaport of Ust-Luga. So as you can see in these pictures, the ships were damaged significantly, and some of these ships were supposed to use for military purposes. The second area that was attacked by the Ukrainians is the area around the settlement of Ust-Luga. As you can see, the Ukrainians once again attacked the energy infrastructure, oil infrastructure in this area, and port infrastructure as well. And during the previous 24 hours we received lots of videos where we can see the consequences of attack. Here we can see that the fire covered the entire area, which means that the Ukrainians managed to deal significant damage. Here we can see just the video of explosion, probably the moment when the Ukrainians attacked this territory. Here we can see the same episode, probably brought from another angle, several explosions, and maybe this video was maybe even made from the territory of another state. And here we can see probably the first seconds after attack, very heavy fire in this area and so on. And now we are coming to the most interesting part of this attack. Let's discuss this in details, because this is something like, it seems for me, a breaking point in the conflict in Ukraine, because from now on it's not just the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. It seems that today and these attacks is the beginning of the conflict, probably with the European Union or maybe with the NATO organization. So let's discuss this in details. Once again, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, here we can see the approximate routes of drones and missiles that were launched by the Ukrainian side in the direction of the northern regions. So according to this picture, the Ukrainians attacked the Leningrad region using approximately these routes of attack. So the drones first crossed the Bryansk region, then Smolensk region, then these drones answered probably Pskov region, and then they answered Leningrad region and began bombing and attacking the territory in the western and the northern parts of the Leningrad region. So this is the information that was published by many pro-Ukrainian sources. But the thing is, and the main problem is, that during the day we received lots of updates about drones over the Baltic states. So we received lots of updates that several drones were recorded over the territory, over the Baltic region, over the Baltic states, and the source report that there were hundreds of drones, and it seems that those drones belong to Ukraine. So for example, we have this picture. So according to information we have, according to the Estonian authorities, the chimney of the Over power plant in Estonia, which was attacked by a drone that accidentally flew in. The facility suffered no immediate damage and no one was injured. According to the preliminary data from the prosecutor's office, the drone was not targeting Estonia. So basically a drone was flying over the territory of Estonia, but for some reason this drone hit this construction. Later we received another important second picture, this one, Latvia reports that the drone that crashed on its territory was Ukrainian. So the Ukrainian authorities, local authorities, find parts of drone that fell on the territory of this state. And later we received an official statement made by the Latvian authorities. A Ukrainian drone that was heading towards the Leningrad region of the Russian Federation crashed into the chimney of a power plant in Estonia, and it was not the only one, Prime Minister of Estonia. Minister of Defense Hanna Pevkur added that Ukraine used about 100 drones in this attack. One of them fell in Latvia, one hit the chimney of our very power plant, and several other crossed Estonia's maritime border over the Gulf of Finland. It is possible that some drones may have fallen elsewhere. So according to these statements, according to these pictures, and according to this panning, many drones of Ukraine was launched not using these routes of attack that we discussed a minute ago, but these drones were using another routes of attack. And several pro-Russian sources published this map where we can see the approximate and possible routes of those Ukrainian drones that were launched in the northern direction of the Russian Federation. And according to this map, the Ukrainians launched their drones using these routes of attack. So probably approximately hundreds of drones of the armed forces of Ukraine first were flying over the state of Poland, then over Lithuania, then over Latvia, then over Estonia, and only then those drones entered the territory of the Russian Federation. And the first batch of drones first attacked the port infrastructure of Ust-Luga. Then the second batch of drones moved further in the northern direction and attacked the settlement of Vyborg. So this is the situation that many sources are trying to explain us. From one side, we can say that, of course, the situation is difficult. Of course, the situation is very interesting for the Russian Federation and what the Russians are going to do with this, because the drones are flying over the Baltic states, but who knows what kind of drones are these and whether the Russians have the right or not to bring them down. But I would like to point to attention that it's not something simple. It's not something that can be forgotten by anybody. But something similar we saw in 2022. I would like to remind you that at the beginning of the special military operation, the Russians, when they began this operation, they answered the territory of Ukraine, let's say from the eastern parts of Ukraine, from the northern parts. The Russians answered Ukraine from almost every single direction. But there was a very interesting and unique direction that the Russians used at the beginning of the special military operation, and we are talking about the territory of Belarus. So a lot of soldiers, lots of forces, missiles and strikes, aircrafts, helicopters entered the territory of Ukraine basically from the territory of the Republic of Belarus, and they managed to approach the city of Kyiv from the northwest. And when the Russians later withdrew their positions from this area, the Russians continued using the territory of the Republic of Belarus to attack Ukraine with missiles and drones. And this is a very important thing, because when those things were happening, the attacks using the territory of Belarus, the Belarusian forces didn't attack the territory of Ukraine and Ukrainian forces. The Russians were using the territory of the Republic of Belarus to attack Ukraine. And if you remember, during those days, and according to international law and the international legislation, everybody blamed the Russians as the aggressors, everybody blamed the Russians as an offensive side, and so on. And if you remember, according to international legislation, the aggressor is not only the side of the conflict who attacks using forces, but also a state which territory is being used for these purposes. So this is a very important thing, and according to those things, the Russians were forced to stop using the territory of the Republic of Belarus in these purposes, because according to international legislation, Ukraine at the beginning of the special military operation had two enemies, the Republic of Belarus and the Russian Federation. The Republic of Belarus because its territory, the territory of this state, was used in the purposes to attack Ukraine. So now we can see the similar picture. So when talking about the Russian side, currently it's not Ukraine who attacked the Russian Federation overnight and during the previous 24 hours. According to the international legislation, according to the fact that the airspace of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia were used for these purposes, the Russians can recognize these Baltic states as an allies, official allies of Ukraine in the conflict, and the Russians can recognize them as aggressors or something like this. So this is the situation, and this is a very interesting thing. As of now, the Russians haven't made any official statement on this matter. Several sources reported that this information about attack through the Baltic states is a fake information, very difficult to understand and very difficult to explain what is happening right now in this area. But this is something new, because we understand that the Ukrainians they believe they found a weak point in the international legislation, in the relations between the Russian Federation, Ukraine and NATO, because we need to understand that even if the Russians began bombing and destroying these drones, the only way to do this is to bring down and to destroy them over the Baltic states, which can be recognized by the NATO countries as, let's say, attack on the alliance itself. So this is a very, very dangerous game that the Ukrainians started, but who knows what is going to happen next. And I would like to remind you that several days ago, Bloomberg published a very interesting article on this matter. The Bloomberg stated that in May 2026, Russia will launch an offensive against Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia, just as it did in Ukraine in 2022, Bill's wild prediction. A new forecast from Germany propagandists for the end of this spring. The publication made similar predictions in December 2021, several months before the war in Ukraine began. At the end of 2021, the German publication Bild reported that Russia was planning to seize two-thirds of Ukraine, including Kyiv, March 2026, and the same publication is publishing hints with similar predictions of a Russian offensive. So, and from this perspective, from the perspective that Ukrainians are planning to use the Baltic states' territory to attack the Russian Federation, from this perspective, the Russians don't have any other option how to make this situation not to happen. So a very dangerous game, as you can see, has started. I'm not sure whether the Baltic states are very happy with this situation, and I think that they are not happy with this, because they confirmed and they made an official statement that those were Ukrainian drones flying over territory. Yes, the Baltic states, they're not saying whether this was made with their permission or not, because they don't understand probably what to say in this situation, but it's a very dangerous game. Anyway, let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 24 hours, small changes were recorded through the entire line of combat contact. As for the Zaporozhye direction, no changes were recorded. There are still very heavy clashes. As for the Dobropolye direction, lots of explosions were recorded in the area of the settlements of Vadyanskaya and Svitle. Lots of explosions. The Russians are using aviation to attack these territories. And this is not the first day when we received a video of this or like this. The Russians, it seems, are tasked to establish complete control over these territories. So that is why they're reducing these villages to ruins with aviation, with very heavy bombardments. It seems that after the fall of Belitska, the Russians may try to break through Ukraine's defense right exactly in the direction of this settlement. As for the Konstantinovka direction, during the previous 24 hours, no changes were recorded. Lots of FPV drone attacks. The Ukrainians are trying to bring additional reinforcements and reserves in the southern parts of the city of Konstantinovka, but the Russians control the situation, and when they see another vehicle of the armored forces of Ukraine, they try to destroy this vehicle immediately. As for the Slaviansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, small changes were recorded. The Russians, according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, improved their position significantly in the area of the settlement of Nikiforovka. Based on the reports that were published by the Group of Forces South and by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, we have adjusted the map. Furthermore, we continue receiving updates that the Russians are approaching the settlements of Alexandrovka from the south and from the northeast. At the same time, we start receiving reports that the Ukrainians Ukrainians launched a counter-offensive operation in this area with the purpose to probably ruin the Russian plans regarding the offensive operation towards Slovensk. The Ukrainians began offensive operation in the area of Minkovka, and we have a video where we can see how the Ukrainians were moving through the settlement from one building to another. So based on this video, based on these geolocations, we have adjusted the map. As for the occupants' direction, during the previous 24 hours, we received just a small update that the Russians improved their positions to the south of the settlement of Pishane. So this stronghold most likely was captured by Russians. So we've finished with the Ukraine update, and now let's discuss the situation in the Middle East. And here we can see that maybe the United States of America is trying to find a solution how to settle this conflict, but it seems that the Iranians are not going to do this. First of all, and the most important thing is that the United States of America, through their, let's say, channels, affiliated media, published this article about 15 points how to end the war in Iran with Iran. So the most important things is that removal of all sanctions on Iran, U.S. assistance in advancing and developing a civilian nuclear project, removal of the threat of sanctions being imposed, Iran's nuclear program is frozen under a defined framework, enriched uranium to remain but under supervision and agreed limits, missile program to be addressed at a later stage with limits and quantity and range, use of nuclear programs restricted to civilian defensive purposes, development of existing nuclear capabilities. So, when talking about this list that was published by the United States of America, it's almost similar to demands that we can see from the Russian side regarding Ukraine. So, demobilization, of course, demilitarization, and many no weapons, limited forces, and so on. And the Iranians, of course, they reviewed these documents, and during the previous 24 hours, we received a very interesting statement from the Iranian side and their own demands on this matter. The Iranian media report 5 conditions to end the war. First, a full halt to aggression and assassinations by the coalition. Concrete guarantees that war will not be imposed on Iran again. Guaranteed and clearly defined war reparations, and an end to the war across all fronts, including for all resistance groups in the region, international recognition and guarantees of Iran's sovereign authority over the Strait of Hormuz. So the Iranians are saying that from now on they will control the Strait of Hormuz, and everybody will be forced to pay $2 million to Iran if they want to use this territory for the logistic purposes. So when talking about these 5 demands, it's not a 15-point plan that was provided by the United States of America, just 5 points. But when talking about these 5 points, we can say that Iran has set very tough conditions for returning to ceasefire talks with Trump administration. According to people familiar with the matter, Tehran is demanding major concessions, including closure of all US bases in the Gulf, reparations for attacks on Iran, we are talking about hundreds of billions, a new system in Strait of Hormuz allowing Iran to collect transit fees, $2 million per vessel or tanker, guarantees that war won't restart, no limits for forces, missiles, and so on, and end to Israeli strikes on Hezbollah, full sanctions relief, the right to keep its missile program without limits. So obviously these 5 points are completely unacceptable for the United States of America and the coalition, which means that everything will continue. Another important thing is that the United States of America would like to remind you, yesterday they announced a 5-day energy ceasefire. And several hours passed since that announcement, and the Iranians stated that the coalitions attacked very important objects of energy infrastructure. Iranian state media have accused the US of violating the energy ceasefire announced by Trump yesterday. The Fars agency states that yesterday, after Trump's announcement, the Natural Gas Management Administration building and gas pressure reduction station in Isfahan were hit. So according to these statements, the coalition began bombing and attacking the city of Isfahan. And later, we received another important statement that the coalition attacked the nuclear power station in the area of the city of Bushehr. And we have this satellite picture where we can see what kind of building was damaged. As you can see, this construction was damaged, and we clearly can see the consequences of attack that was carried out, according to Iranians, by the coalition. So the US and Israel attacked the Bushehr naval navy base and nuclear power plant. In response, the Iranians targeted energy infrastructure of Israel. And right after this nuclear power station was attacked, the Iranians attacked the territory of Israel, and we have lots of videos from the area of the power station, from the area of the Orot Rabin power plant. So lots of videos were published from this area. For example, in this video we can see smoke over the power station. The sources are saying that the Iranians attacked this territory with the ballistic missile. Here we can see a fire in the same area. Here we can see explosions also in the area of the power station. And it seems that the ceasefire, the energy truce that was announced by the President of the United States of America doesn't work. You know that these days lots of media are saying that the war in the Middle East went out of control, and currently nobody can control the situation. So this is the reality, but from the other side, the reality is telling us that the United States of America continue collecting their forces in the Middle East, and in coming days, so the day after tomorrow, the first Marines will arrive in the Middle East, which most likely the United States of America will use them for the ground operation. And of course, the Iranians have already commented the situation. They stated Iran has threatened to seize the territories of United Arab Emirates and Bahrain if the United States of America launches a ground operation. So Bahrain, this is the state of Bahrain, a small island in the Persian Gulf, and this is the territory of the United Arab Emirates. Most likely the Iranians were talking about the northern parts of the state, about these islands and these territories. Furthermore, it seems that the ground operation is inevitable, which means that states like Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates will be on the first line of fire. And so that is why the citizens of Kuwait began evacuation. We have lots of videos with a very big traffic, a mass exodus of Kuwaiti residents from the country after the royal family's escape. We have different speculations on this matter. Furthermore, the Iranians attacked the Kuwait International Airport. We're talking about these fuel storages, so with the purpose to block the airfield. And this the blockade of the airfield, we have high anomalies, as you can see. The blockade of airfield will lead to exodus, and it's led in the end to exodus. And now we have very huge traffic without any possibilities to be mobile for units, for forces, and so on. So the situation, the build-up continues. More and more forces are arriving in this area, and it seems that in 2-3 days something big might happen. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds you that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.